Skill drain is like a headache. You have to determine whether that headache bothers you enough to take some aspirin, or if you can just push through the pain and win regardless. Or in some cases, even succumb to the pain altogether and call into work while staying under a blanket all day. The trick with something like skill drain is preparing to acknowledge its existence. Now, this can mean dealing with the problem outright, or it can even mean just ignoring the problem entirely and going on about your day. In either situation, it all depends on you and how you play. Are you a control player that just doesn't care about skill drain? Or are you a combo player with many outs to it integrated within your strategy? Or even further, are you just an Oonga Boonga player with a barrage of sticks to beat your opponent with? Determining this will affect how you survive the skill drain crisis. Coming up, I'll give you some examples of decks that can play under skill drain, as well as some cards that can help you out it in case you don't play one of those decks. When thinking of decks to play in a skill drain format, you need to consider a couple of things. One, being that skill drain only negates monsters who are face up on the field, and two, being that they can still activate their effects. Should you decide to go the tough it up and play through it route, let's cover some decks that you can consider or analyze to beat skill drain players. I will give you a warning now that these decks are in no particular order. It's just a list of examples that I threw together to give you guys ideas to start working on your next deck for this format. Number 1 is Cleafort. Most of their important monsters either activate when they're tributed or are just unaffected by spell and trap effects, which makes Cleafort deck ideal for this format given that Cleafort Towers, being its boss monster, is one of those monsters that's unaffected by spell or trap effects, making it a perfect style beat stick to actually even yield skill drain against its opponent to make sure that it can do what it needs to do while keeping the opponent on the backdrop. Now this next one might seem like a bit of an odd pick, but number 2 on this list is actually Sky Striker. I only picked this deck because it is primarily a spell-based strategy. However, skill drain does end up shutting off the entire link engine, which allows them to have a lot of recurability and grindability through longer game states. That being the case, they definitely have at least some sort of a standpoint of being able to play the more grindy game by playing a more back row tempo-based strategy. The next one on the list is one that we've been seeing a lot in the recent meta, and that is number 3 is Tenyi. And this is specifically actually Tenyi and not necessarily Tenyi Sword Soul, since Sword Soul is very much affected by skill drain. But if you take Tenyi back to what its original intent was, it really is just a deck meant to summon out really big normal monster beat sticks and then have back row to protect it. And then all of the main deck Tenyi monsters either activate in the hand or the graveyard. So the next one on this list is going to seem like kind of a no-brainer. This was everybody's first thought when skill drain came to 3. So number 4 is actually Eldritch. Basically, the deck only played 2 monsters before with Eldritch the Golden Lord and Ecclesia, but now basically you just sub out the Dogmatica package, play skill drain, and there you go. You have a really devastating back row deck that can summon really devastating beat sticks for like next to no cost that actually gains them more advantage in the end. Alright, and coming up next at number 5 is Danger. I know it's not really much of a deck on its own, but it is a common engine to find in several different strategies, such as Phantom Knights or Orchist, or things that are graveyard reliant that just need those bonus extenders sometimes. The main reason the Dangers are actually viable under skill drain is that once again they activate in the hand. They can potentially net you some more advantage, or at least help you cycle through your deck a little bit more and get you some bodies on field that you can start doing things with to maybe either find a way to get out of skill drain or just play through it. But if you pitch Danger Thunderbird, if you end up discarding that, then you can just end up getting rid of the skill drain entirely, meaning that the rest of your plays are free to go. Next up is Machina at number 7. If you still get into the right parts, you can still make things happen like getting a Citadel on field or a Ruin Force. The deck has options under skill drain. It's definitely really known for summoning big beat sticks, and it's especially more viable in a skill drain format when it's playing the back row itself. And number 8 on this list is another one of my all-time favorites, and that is Prank Kids. This is another one of those decks where all of the effects basically resolve in the graveyard. And they're big monsters, they tribute for cost, so they are no longer face up on the field to be negated by skill drain, since they can still activate their effects to tribute off and dodge skill drain entirely. And last up on this list at number 9 is literally just any deck that can go first and set up a negation. I know this is easier said than done because that involves winning a die roll and having a deck that can set up disruption like that. Even if it's just something as simple like an infinite impermanence that can turn it off for a turn to let you OTK, that works. But moving on to the other hand, if you take the option to ingest some medicine to eliminate the headache, here are some potential techs to throw into your build. Now remember, not every person can use aspirin and not every person can use ibuprofen, just like some of these techs. So be sure to keep that in mind when deck building. So especially with Imperial Order being removed from this format entirely, a lot of these options have become more viable to adding things like skill drain or other floodgates that you might come across. But once again, like I mentioned before, be sure to keep some of these ideas in mind while deck building, and just like with the decks, these cards are in no particular order, so let's go ahead and start off with number 1 is going to be Lightning Storm, the go-to for so many high-end meta players. It is a very expensive staple and for a very good reason. The ability to take out a lot of the front row or all of the back row is a really good versatile tool to be able to use in a lot of decks, especially once it goes second, but of course being a half back row removal definitely makes it really easy to be able to out something like Skill Drain or even Summon Limit or Tikaboo or whatever floodgates you're facing. Lightning Storm is just overall a really good card. But this is one of those you need to keep interactions in mind, because if you play something like Nibiru or Miradora that's going to end up on your field during your opponent's turn or because of something they do, then your Lightning Storm is going to be turned off as soon as it comes back to your turn unless you waste your battle phase and crash it or get rid of it somehow. And number 2 for this list is Cosmic Cyclone. This is one of those cases to keep Artifact Lancia in mind. If you're playing a deck like, say, Phantom Knights, and you're doing a lot of banishing from the graveyard to keep your plays going, your opponent is going to be more likely to side in something like Artifact Lancia against you, so if they do that, you're going to be out of your way to get rid of Skill Drain. Number 3 on the list is Harpie's Feather Duster, basically just another single copy of Lightning Storm in this specific scenario, because it's just going to out all of your opponent's back row, and then just allow you to play freely. Same thing goes with Twin Twisters. This is just another way to out some more of your opponent's cards. This is a 2 for 2, so it trades really even on advantage, but it's a good way to snipe out stuff, especially in the standby phase. And number 5 on the list is Mystical Space Typhoon. Wow, these cards are really original, aren't they? I know. It just really sounds like I'm preaching play the out 5-head, but it's true. I mean, if you're looking to make a deck as competitively viable as possible, you have to consider all of the options that people are going to be running in the metagame and ways to counter them or at least be able to play through them. And not every strategy can handle every single one of these interaction points and still be able to make a play at the end of the day. So if you have one of those strategies that can't necessarily do that, you have to think of ways to help bolster your deck to be able to play through stuff like that. So just play the out 5-head is actually not that bad of an argument, to be honest. Now we're going to start getting into some of the more nitty-gritty stuff here. Next up on the list is Royal Decree, and I know a lot of people are not going to be too psyched about this option because it is a trap card. And yes, it does negate all those trap cards in the field, but obviously there's the inconvenience of having to draw it, having to set it, and wait a turn to activate it, and hope that your opponent doesn't have the out for it as well. I know it seems kind of counterintuitive, but at the same time, if it gets the job done, it gets the job done. And you never know, it might just be playing that really heavy back row Eldritch match, where Royal Decree is Royal Decree. So the next 2 on this list are kind of a very similar option in the way that they function, so I'm just going to kind of list them together and give their reasonings together as well. The next 2 on this list are Red Reboot and Crossout Designator. And the interesting thing about these cards is that they will only negate until the end of the turn. Well, that means you're golden, right? Only if you can OTK or find a really quick out to that skill drain, such as like a Nightmare Phoenix or an Access Code Talker. But outside of that, they're both really good options and both cards that see a decent amount of meta play right now. More so in the rogue decks, but you might see it a little more in meta now. Alright, and this last option you guys really need to hear me out on because it is going to sound so absolutely ridiculous, but trust me, it is technically still a viable option. And that is going to be Mystic Mine. The only reason that I put this card on the list at all is if your opponent is playing the skill drain beatdown approach. If you just leave Mystic Mine on the field, they can't attack, so now you can stall until you get the out that you need to be able to take care of that skill drain. There is a ton of potential to find outs to this card. Not all of them are generic. There are some like more specific ones, there are more niche ones, but just be experimental. Look around, find a bunch of cards. There's over 10,000 cards in this game now that you guys can build with. So be sure to take a look and explore around some of them and come up with some of your own ideas. If there's any cards that I missed, definitely let me know down in the comments, guys. I really appreciate it, and I always love being able to have those conversations with you. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys, but if you want to explore more on How to Yu-Gi-Oh!, we got a whole playlist right over here for you guys to check out, so be sure to go take a look at that and enjoy all the education goodiness. Anyways, that's all you got for me today, guys. Remember, good fun. Have luck.